ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. We express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, and we seek blessings upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so we are in the latter portions of Al-Baqarah. And what is the overall discussion here? The overall discussion is that the Prophet, peace be upon him, through the Quran, is answering a number of questions from the Sahaba. So they ask you about fasting. They ask you about how much they should give. They ask you about fighting, so forth and so on. And so that's been the overall discussion, that in this section there are a number of questions that are being responded to. And then the sub-discussion is essentially about marriage divorce. And so here, we're on Ayah 233. A lot of these points are going to be fiqh points, legal points, so we're not going to talk about them very much. So we're actually going to go through quite a bit of material. But going through this, mothers shall suckle their children for 2 whole years. Okay. For those who wish to complete the suckling. The duty of feeding and clothing nursing mothers in a seemly manner is upon the father of the child. But no one should be charged beyond his capacity. A mother should not be made to suffer because of her child, nor should he to whom the child is born be made to suffer because of his child. And the father's heir, on the father's heir is incumbent, the like of that which was incumbent upon the father, if they desire to wean the child by mutual consent, and after consultation, it is no sin for them. If you wish to give your children out to a nurse, it is no sin for you, provided that you pay what is due from you in kindness. Observe your duty to Allah and know that Allah is seer of what you do. Okay. A couple points that are relevant for us, aside from the content of the ayah. In terms of abrogation, naskh. We've spoken in the past about naskh regarding the ayahs on alcohol. Right? The first instruction on alcohol was there's good in alcohol, there's benefit, but the sin outweighs the benefit. And then later, the Prophet, peace be upon him, receives an ayah saying, do not come intoxicated to prayer. So you know what you're saying. And then from there, do not drink at all. Okay. And so the point is, each succeeding ayah overrided the previous ayah. Okay. Likewise for fasting. First, fasting is prescribed for you, as was prescribed for those before you. Then later, fast a certain number of days. So what did they used to fast at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him? The 3 middle days of the month. We call them the white days, 13th, 14th, 15th. And then fast in Ramadan. So then they start fasting in Ramadan. And so the obligation to fast during the middle days was no longer an obligation, it was voluntary, it was recommended. Okay. The interesting thing here that you're probably not familiar with is that it used to be an obligation in the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him, that the Muslims, if they had a child, they had to breastfeed the child. Okay. And then this ayah changed it. This ayah changed it to, you can if you want. But if you're going to do it for 2 years, and neither the mother nor the father should be burdened. And you're also free to hire a nurse, making sure you pay, in kindness. Okay. So the key point I'm making is that this is a different type of naskh. This is a different type of abrogation, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, recited an instruction, and then a later ayah overrided the instruction. Okay. Now keep in mind, this is not the same as the case of the Qibla, right? So the Qibla, first they prayed towards Medina, or prayed towards Jerusalem, and then, as you know, then they received instructions to face towards Mecca. Okay. But there's no knowledge indicating that the Prophet, peace on him, received an ayah saying to face towards Jerusalem. Here, and listen carefully to what I'm saying, here we're saying he received an ayah saying that you must nurse your child. And then he received this, and that abrogated that ayah in such a way that the hukam is gone, and it's no longer recited. So I hope you understand what I'm saying here, that this was recited as an ayah, and it's no longer recited as an ayah. Another case is the case of stoning the zani, the adulterer. Okay. Is there any ayah in the Quran that says to do that? No. Okay. That what does the Quran say that you do to the adulterer? You whip the adulterer. Okay. But this is a different type of naskh. Here, it was recited that when you have an adulterer who's married, you stone them. Okay. And that is no longer recited as an ayah, but the hukam is still there in the Sharia. Okay. So you understand what I'm saying? It's okay. So see, I'm using the language carefully because here's how we commonly imagine it. We imagine that the Prophet, peace be upon him, received all the ayahs and they were collected perfectly as the Quran as we have it today. That is correct, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. That the Prophet, peace be upon him, received ayahs that were temporarily to be enforced. And then in his lifetime, they're no longer enforced. And in some cases, they're still recited, like the ayahs about alcohol. In some cases, they're not recited, like the ayah of stoning or the ayah of nursing. See what I'm saying? I'm guessing some of you, yeah, Muhammad. So how would we know? Because the source material would be coming from the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay. That in Bukhari, there's a narration from Omer, may Allah be pleased with him, who says that we used to recite this ayah of stoning. We no longer recite it, and there's a fear that it would be forgotten. But it was still considered to be an obligation to do so. Right. So what am I saying here? That we commonly imagine Islam as here's the Quran, here's the answer for everything, and then you have the Hadith literature, right? Which is not as reliable. That's how we commonly think about it. And one point that I made before is that you should look at the Quran and the Prophet, peace be upon him, as being inseparable from each other. If it was possible to put all the ayahs in chronological order, then you have the biography of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Okay. And so what we're also saying is that the way the Quran was revealed was that in some cases the Prophet, peace be upon him, received something to be recited, but it was only to be recited temporarily. Okay. I mean, so scripture would be like an English word. So, meaning there's still the question, the language that's used is it recited? Is there tilawats of it? And is the hukum still there? The law. So if it's in the Quran, the recitation is still there. If it's in the Quran as we have it, the tilawat is still there, the recitation. But, for example, there's some cases where the law is no longer in place because it's been overtaken by another law. Another example of that would be the laws on inheritance. One place it says to have, to write a will, and another place it says here's the terms of the will. So the terms of the will overrides just a simple instruction to have a will, but you still recite the ayah to have a will. Yes, sir.
I was just going to ask, were they ever part of a surah, or were they just?
That's a good question. Were they ever technically part of a surah? That I don't know. I can find out. Yeah, but they're considered part of the recitation. See what I'm saying? I'd have to find out if they're ever considered to be part of a surah.
I'm saying the ones that are.
Yeah, that are not. Yeah, that's what I'd have to find out. Were they ever considered to be part of a surah back then at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him? My guess is probably to say no, but I'd have to research further. I mean, we still have those ayahs. In class, the teacher actually recited those ayahs, and I can't tell them apart from, in terms of style or language, apart from everything else.
They were never part of any surah.
They would never have been part of a Mozaffar, right? Because they were abrogated before that. But what this should do is enhance your understanding of how the Quran is being revealed to that population. That certain ayahs are there temporarily. Okay. And this is not something that's taught commonly, but this is something that's definitely in the tradition. Okay. That's part of naskh. So,
Ibrahim was one time in the mountain that embraced the Prophet.
Okay.
He started reciting.
Okay.
Over here, is it it coming directly from God? Is it there was a one-time thing is open his heart and now we can receive the message? And is Jibreel is still involved in this?
With the Prophet, peace be upon him?
Yeah.
Yeah, from start to finish. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's coming not direct from God, but through Jibreel. The message is being
I don't understand the point of the question.
Well, what I'm just saying is the Prophet is sitting here all of
Yeah.
a sudden.
Yeah.
He gets revelation.
Uh-huh.
Is that revelation is directly from God?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the way we understand it is that the revelations get categorized into two groups. So wahi matlu, wahi ghayr matlu. So wahi that is recited, wahi that is not recited. So the wahi that is recited, i.e. the Quran, is definitely coming from Jibreel, from God to Jibreel to the Prophet peace on him, except for the last two ayahs of Al-Baqarah. The last two ayahs of Al-Baqarah, the Prophet peace upon him receives those on the night journey, directly from God. Yeah. As far as wahi ghayr matlu, that's a different question. That I don't know the answer to. The material that we have collected in the hadith literature, right, has the Prophet's practices. In some cases, there are definitely instructions from Jibreel alayhi salam. Like, for example, how did he pray? He was taught by Jibreel alayhi salam. All the steps to prayer. But other things, Allah knows best.
What I'm saying is, to human understanding, human being has a lot of capacity.
Sure.
He has a lot of capacity for understanding. If Allah is leaving us to human beings, this is your problem, this is the problem. Believe something in your heart, for goodness. This is the ground rule to work in this kind of thing.
Okay.
But basically, it is your human problem, your human society problem, and the way
Okay.
the society at large amount of thing. It just, it seems like it's more of a human kind of very nice, deeper understanding. And I'm just saying that when the Quran talks about أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ أَفَلَا تَشْعُرُونَ أَفَلَا تَدَبَّرُونَ about constantly challenges human nature, common sense. It just leaves it to the human being. This is how you should deal in a particular situation. Situation timings are different now over here. And we have to look to this, that keeping Allah's words, constantly reminding ourselves and yet solve the problem. We solve problems vary from person to person, personality to personality and stuff like that. And situation change all the time. Human being have to respond in those different kind of environment to his own intelligence that God has given.
Okay, so far so good. But I don't see where you're going with the question.
What I'm saying, all these ayah, it would be just it's a thing of human understanding. The language, everything is beautiful and everything is really nice. And I would say finally it has to be left to the individual people in the light of this thing to resolve their issues, problems, wives, children.
Yeah, I mean, in principle, I don't see a problem with what you're saying. It seems fine. I mean, there are some cases where Allah Ta'ala is giving us a command to follow, right? And there, I'd be obliged to follow it. In this case, here's a recommendation, right? This is not a command.
Sometimes a clear hukum.
Well,
It's just a suggestion. كتب عليكم الصيام. كتب على نفسه الرحمة. لا it's prescribed for you. This is good for you.
So this would then be the question of the scholarly deliberation to figure out, okay, what is regarded as fard, sunnah, nafil, all those things, right? And matters that are considered fard would not just be matters where the scholar is saying this is an obligation, but they're united in regarding it as an obligation, right? Which is a very small amount of things.
In case of a murder, somebody is really is a nuisance to the society. He has to be dealt with severe punishment. And again, the ayah would come, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Make sure Allah is very compassionate. I mean, there's a severe punishment, but then there comes the ayah. So you think like you have to remember and don't cross your boundaries and stuff like that.
Okay. The other thing I want to draw attention to in this ayah is also an ethic regarding religious type work and payment. It says, "It is no sin for you, provided that you pay what is due from you in kindness." Okay. There's also a principle built into this. This principle that's built into this is that, generally speaking, should someone doing religious work be paid for religious work? What do you think? Yeah, the general opinion is absolutely. However, the proper ethic is you owe me this much. It's you don't go in with any expectation, but the person who's receiving the service, who's receiving the benefit, should be assumed to be giving something. Correct? Meaning, I don't come in and say, okay, you guys all owe me this amount of money, but this should be part of an agreement, or it's like an unspoken agreement that the person providing the service doesn't expect anything, but the person receiving the service expects to give something. Yes.
Today's world, they should set a price. The price should be relatively high. Put a value on the education. Show that it is valuable as opposed to being free or being paid for rich.
Yeah.
And so that's the first question. I've heard that quite a lot because a lot of people think it's something knowledge becomes devalued in the market. And kind of goes on the heels of my second question would be, or I guess that wasn't a comment. The second part would be, how did they handle it at the time of the Muslim empires where the Khalifa, for example, was paying a stipend to the scholar to teach people who were under his realm?
Yeah, I mean, for both these questions, one, the point being, the question being this idea that in our era, to put a value on Islamic learning, that the price should be made, there should be a price, and it should be pretty high. And the other, what did they do in history? Say this would definitely be culturally specific. Like, I know for certain that if I taught a course for free versus $100 versus $500, I'll probably get more students, so I charge $500. Right? That's just the nature of how our psychology is. I have difficulty actually doing that, right? But I do know consistently I'll get more students, right? And on top of that, if they're willing to pay that much, they're going to be staying. You know, I mean, look at our class, for example. It could be the problems of the teacher, right? But the point is that I just know from my own experience that if I charge a significantly higher amount, the students are going to be more, and they'll be there for the long term, and they're going to be more dedicated, right? That's just the nature of our culture. The problem there, however, is when it becomes a commodity, and I think that's something to be concerned about. That it can fall, the person who's teaching can fall into the trap of trying to teach those things that will be more popular, as opposed to actually taking people through a curriculum. See what I'm saying? The way a friend of mine puts it, he puts it in a very wise way. He says that even like for martial arts you're not supposed to be teaching, right? Or you're not supposed to be charging money, but you have to so you can have food on the table. And so you have the martial arts schools here that charge money. They're still doing a good, right? They're still providing a benefit. You know? And such is the case with a lot of these programs that we have that travel around the country, and they charge for these courses. They're providing a benefit, but the risk is that you get caught up in, you know, what is my bottom line, what's coming into my pocketbook, and that can affect the courses that you teach. And I think that's where the big risk is, that there's some courses that are not going to be popular, but that people have to know. You know, so that's that. In terms of Islamic history, I mean, there's the famous case, it may or may not be true, of Nizam al-Mulk, and it may not even be Nizam al-Mulk, in Baghdad. He goes to one of his madrasas that he sponsored, and he wants to see what the kids are like. So one by one, he goes to the kids and he asks them, why are you in this school? One kid says, because I want to make a lot of money. Now, this is a school of learning, ilm, Islamic learning. And he's thinking, this is not the right answer. That's not the answer I want to hear. Second one, why are you here? Oh, I want to get a great job. And he's thinking, this is not why the kids should be here. And they're all about 12 years old. One by one, he's asking all the kids why you're in the school, and every kid is giving a dunya answer, a dunyawi answer. And now he's reaching the point where he's going to shut down the school. He's so upset, right? Finally, he gets to the last kid. Okay, why are you here? He says, and the kid says, I know there's a creator to the universe, creator of the universe, and I want to know what he wants from me. Okay, and so then the Nizam, he's happy. And then the legend is that was Al-Ghazali. Right. So the point is that at different times in our history, there were different levels of prestige to someone who's a person of learning. Right. As a fellow teacher, you know that the prestige given to a teacher of any subject is not as high in our culture as it is for other fields, especially an athlete. Right. And so throughout Islamic history, there have been times where the ulama were employees of the government, and there was a prestige that went along with that, or they were separate from the government, and that's where they got their prestige. Right? So it really varies. There's no consistent answer, but the consistent view, however, is that there should be that if you're doing Islamic work, it's really great if you want to do it for free, but you have to collect a salary. Right? If you want to donate it back, that's up to you. And this goes all the way back at least to Omer, may Allah be pleased with him. I don't know if Abu Bakr was getting, one of those two was trying to work in addition to being Khalifa. And then his advisors told him, no, there's not enough time for you to work and do this. So under Omar's rule, you were getting a stipend. It was a small stipend, but you were getting something. And one of his employees, one of his governors, tried to refuse it. He says, no, you're going to have to take it. You can do whatever you want with the money, but you have to take it. Think about what else that does. It also creates accountability in dunya too, right? If you're doing something for free, then automatically that gives you freedom psychologically to get away with a lot of things, because you're not beholden to anything.
Very high salary for judges.
Maybe, I'm not aware.
And the reasoning for that was probably then I've heard that sort of transfer over eventually to our modern day police officers.
Okay.
Prevent bribery.
That would make sense. That I know like Dr. Israr in Pakistan, people who are working for him have to be getting paid at least a government level salary, right? The idea being that you have to be paid well, especially so you don't have to do any other thing, either get another job or turn to corrupt means. Good.
Free madrasa within that scholars people across the street where the Taliban about to in his own children. Abdul Haq was Samuel Haq and Abdul Haq, that was his father.
Okay.
And the school was open for 40 years. And after spending 10 years, they would be knocking on the door of people to get some food. There should be some soup along with it. And I would question, I said, this is not, his own children became a professor, one became a minister, one has a store in IQRA, which is a village there. And these Taliban would be begging and knocking on the door to ask for food. This is sort of a violence. So I talked to my friend. He said, well, these people come from Chatra and Afghanistan, they don't have any other sources. And I said, well, my village is this way, Kohart is this way. Somebody asks you to go to Kohart, and you tell them, well, you cannot reach there. So these secular people started with ABC, and they never stopped. They kept on growing. And Al-Bidi guys stopped at some point, and they did not grow. The bottom line was to develop the human brain, so you could start thinking like this kid said, there's a creator in the universe.
I would say, I would agree with most of what you're saying, except for the last point, that I wouldn't distinguish between the secular and the religious people, that it's either the community is going to support the scholars or it's not, right? And if we look at the scholars as the people who have answers, as the experts, right, then that's one thing. If we look at the deen from the perspective that, okay, I have all the answers that I need, I can figure it out for myself, I think that is a sentiment that we have in the community, and thus that's why we find a lot of vilification of scholars. And I'll say, speaking as someone who was a regular technical professional and then went into some degree of a little bit of Islamic study, it's a world of difference. I mean, I have, a little bit of intelligence, and I would read the Quran and come to conclusions. It's a world of difference when you're coming from some degree of knowledge of the tradition. And the key difference, and I think you might have made a point like this earlier, like many months ago, that typically the non-scholar reduces Allah Ta'ala's mercy quite a bit compared to the scholar, how much the trained scholar. The trained scholar usually has a lot more flexibility in understanding how to, what needs to be done than the non-scholar. The stereotype is the opposite. The stereotype is that the scholar is strict and that we're the flexible people. But in practice, in my experience, it's been completely the other way around.
What I'm working is not
Yeah.
this part of the world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's other problems over there,
If you
Yeah.
ask a scholar certain questions, so you have to come and talk.
Yeah, and I would suggest that they probably don't have, full training.
I don't think there is not too many people that can bless you with anything.
But actually,
Part of that, the scholars argue versus law, the scholars argue that it should be monetized and incentivized, is that in today's world, it's all driven by dollars.
Mhm.
So if you want to talk about the credit, you have to make it feel that someone who's going to
absolutely, yeah. If someone has to choose between going into a lucrative field versus Islamic study, and then you go, Yeah.
You send the idiots and the dunces over to
Yeah.
Lamar to become confident and
Yeah.
close to the best of the practice, so you'll never get an open valley, you'll get
yeah,
the holy house.
yeah.
I don't get it
Yeah, how many students are there right now in madrasas in Pakistan? Give me a number.
a lot.
Give me a rough number, estimate. How many students in madrasas?
Maybe 20%.
Now give me a number. Yeah, well, a minimum probably of about 300,000, right? Okay. And then the question is, how many scholars in Pakistan can you name? Okay.
A lot of scholars.
I'm saying there's a lot of scholars. I'm saying how many can you name?
That is not
Okay, I'm saying living right now. They're all dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So there's Mufti Taqi Usmani and maybe a few others. And what is the point that I'm making here is essentially this point, that that there are very few that seem to rise to such a level that they can provide answers all across the globe. Otherwise, all the people that are being revered are people who've passed away.
And it's also a failure of Pakistan. It's also a failure of Pakistan that the educational system is put up by the government as well. Because of the fact that education system is so bad, right? There's alternative systems set up, private madrasas.
Yeah.
Those are also exceptionally bad. And so the people who can afford to go to a private institution and get education of some quality go there, and the rest sort of funnels down.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple factors there. But I'm sorry.
So I was going to ask, going back to the ayah then, in your initial comment about asking people to pay what they'll pay, if the world today doesn't value it,
Yeah.
what's it about this class? If you charge $500, you charge nothing.
I would say here is more of an ethic. This is not a command, right? Because the whole passage is basically saying what? That people have to be treated fairly according to their capacity, starting with nursing, all the way down to the people who are providing nursing, and even the mother and father should not be overloaded. They should not be burdened, and then likewise for the person, if you're bringing someone in, that you should not be taking advantage of them, right? And so here, I think one of the wonderful things about this particular ayah is that it's focused on an ethic of courtesy. Okay? This is not a command. Right? The issue of pay and such, I think, would be very culturally specific. Likewise, I don't know any prohibition against charging, and that would be where the test really be. If there's no prohibition, then the door is wide open. Okay. Continuing the theme. Okay, so وَالَّذِينَ يُتَوَفَّوْنَ مِنْكُمْ. So those of you who are dying, or who die, and then just going from the English, and leave behind wives, they the wives shall keep themselves apart for 4 months and 10 days. When they reach the term, there is no sin for you in anything that they may do with themselves in decency. Bil ma'ruf would probably also translate as according to their cultural norms. Allah is informed of what you do. So, what is the issue here? That if you are a widow, then for 4 months, 10 days, you don't get married. Right? Some take this to a step further, that for 4 months, 10 days, you stay in the home. You don't leave the home. Okay, that would be something that's culturally specific. This is one of the big questions, again, of our culture. That suppose in your household you have the traditional household where the husband is providing and the woman is at home taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, so forth and so on. Then what happens when the husband dies? Okay. That's one of the big questions. That where's the wife going to go? Where is she going to earn her livelihood from? Including on top of the fact that she has children to take care of, and suppose that they're young. Right? That's one of the big questions that, as a community, I don't think we have anything remotely as an answer for right now. Right? And I mean, I've seen extreme cases of this where, you know, the husband gets sick with cancer, and is not able to run his businesses, and in one family that I'm thinking of out in the western suburbs, the husband eventually passed away, and I don't know what happened to them, but the wife literally was going from church to church asking if someone could give her some money. After she'd gone to all the masjids and got some money from them, then she started going to the churches asking, can you give me some money? Right? And the point is that this is something that's a very serious concern in our community. I made the point in a previous class here, right, that what percentage of Pakistanis in Chicago live below the poverty line? Can we talk about it here? This is the actual statistic. 48%. Like 48.3% in Chicago, Pakistanis live below the poverty line. Okay. And it's invisible because there's so much of a sense of shame about this. But that's how bad the situation is here. The person, he only researched the Pakistanis, so I don't know if the Indian situation is identical or if it's different. It's so the point being that there's a lot of people who are not on the radar, who are going through very serious struggles. Yeah.
Is it okay to get health insurance?
I mean, that's one of those fiqh issues. Like health insurance is now essentially law, or it's almost law. So the default opinion is that if it's the law, you got to follow it, right? Life insurance is one of those things that you also got to be careful about which type of life insurance you're taking. Life insurance is not the law, but sometimes your employer requires it. You know, but that's a bigger separate question. I mean, relate to what you're saying. Even suppose that the widow got some payment from life insurance. Usually, life insurance does not take you that far anyway. Right? Ideally, it might take you all the way for a full year, which I think we're going to talk about in a moment. But what do you do after that? These are some of the very serious questions of our time. The point is that there's no place to fall back upon. Okay.
Even people who are affluent, they have big families and a whole bunch of them, not one.
Yeah.
People who are coming from Karachi and us in the north, there's a big difference because most of them have PhDs or master's degree, or sisters have PhD, doctors have PhD, this and that. But in our part, in not this frontier, there'll be one person that he has to support
Many people. Yeah.
So it's just all over the place, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that, in some of our sub-communities here in Chicago, if you have a family tragedy, others in the family will take care of you. But in a lot of cases, you don't have that. And then on top of that, you have the issue of the converts. That's so many sisters convert to Islam and they have children, and they're too embarrassed to ask for any help. You raise your hand?
We've been having this conversation, and apparently a lot of scholars say the intent of the ayah regarding multiple wives is specifically for the women, the women's needs, not for the men's.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that would be. It was a question that I raised last week. We were talking about the marriage crises. Is that a viable choice? in our culture. Okay, so continuing this point, there is no sin for you in that which you proclaim or hide in your minds concerning your interests in marrying certain women, okay, meaning the widows. Allah knows that you will remember them, but plight not your troth woe. Sorry, I picked all this up. We gotta go to somebody easier. There's no sin in you if you hint as a proposal to the women or conceal it in your hearts. Allah knows that you will make mention of them. But do not make a promise to them secretly, except that you speak in a recognized manner. Bil ma'ruf again. Okay, qawlan ma'ruf. So you're speaking to them in dignity according to your cultural norms. Nor resolve upon a contract of marriage until the prescribed time is reached. Be sure that Allah knows what is in your hearts, so fear Him. Okay. And be sure that Allah is forgiving and forbearing. Again, so here it's a fiqhi rule, right? What's the fiqhi point? That if there's a widow and you're interested in marrying the widow, you are allowed to give hint, but you just can't marry her until the 4 months and 10 days have crossed. That's the fiqh rule here. But what's the principle in these ayahs? That if you have someone that you're considering for marriage, act with dignity. Right? Do not act in secrecy, act in dignity. That when you are having these interactions. And this is a recurring theme in these ayahs today, right? Act with courtesy. Okay? Act with dignity. This is the underlying theme here.
These dignity and all these things, one has to be very observant how the society, how does one look dignified.
Yeah. Yeah.
These things have to be learned processes.
Absolutely.
As a suggestion, I go on the train, and sometimes the ladies have their feet on the seat. It's not covered in the guy's mind.
Yeah, sure.
So sometimes guys put their boots on, shoes on, and the guy telling them, put a newspaper.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of things have to be learned processes.
Oh, no doubt, yeah. Cool. I mean, this is one of the big, I think the big things that we as a community can and should focus on. Usually when someone wants to learn deen, they want to focus on fiqh, right? What are the rules of what I need to do? The fiqh that you actually need to know is a very small amount. It's a very, very small amount. And if you think about what are my obligations, what are my minimal obligations, it's basically to pray. Ramadan is once a year. Zakat is once a year. Hajj is once in a lifetime. The only thing that I really need to be aware of is prayer. That's the daily one. Okay? And then that's the minimum. Better than that is more prayers. Better than that is recurring charity. But what I would suggest, and so my point is that the fiqh that you need to know is very minimal. Like you should know how to do a janazah when you have someone who's passed away, but that's not going to be something that's going to happen weekly, inshallah, depending upon your career, I suppose. But what should be focused on in our community is adab, right? What is the best manners to interact with people? That, I think, is something that our community should really place a lot of emphasis on, teaching young people, teaching each other what is the best way to interact. So it's one thing to speak truth, but it's a different issue to speak truth with adab. And our society, American society, is kind of notorious for the attitude that, okay, this is what I am, this is what we are, take it or leave it. But even in our society, we do have an appreciation for dignified behavior. Think about this. I mean, a question that I pose to my students, think of all the people in popular culture. How many people can you name that are presented with dignity? Probably Obama. Okay, he's presented as having an air of dignity, aside from foreign policy and all those things, the way he's presented, right? Bush was not presented that way. Clinton was not presented that way, right? Who else can you think of? Any aspect of life, national figures, international figures, celebrities, anything. Okay. Sorry? Who'd you say? As James Bond, maybe. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, he sort of had that. He had that quality. Yeah, yeah, especially now. Okay. Sorry? Yeah. So it goes back to the point that all these figures that we talk about, they've all passed away, right? But We all have an appreciation in our culture for dignity, but we have almost no role models of dignity. Really try to think about it. Yeah.
As of right now,
Alive.
athletics, I would probably say Wilson. Probably massive.
Yeah, I mean, he has a dignity quality to him. Yeah, I mean, I'm not as familiar with outside of the game. Yeah. I think Peter O'Toole depends on the era. Maybe more so now. Yeah.
So you want someone more contemporary?
Preferably. I mean, someone who is commonly, to some degree, in the press or on television or in movies.
I used to like James Cameron.
But I mean, even then, he's passed away. I don't think he's presented as a man of dignity. He's, a scholar, right? But I'm saying the package of the person, as we understand them, includes a sense of dignity about them. I think Colin Powell had that, right? Until, he kind of sold us out for the war, right? Can you think of anyone? He had that quality. I really felt that he had that quality. I really appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that I would agree with that Senator Paul Simon. Of course, that would be on the Democrat side. I don't know how many Republicans would agree, but I remember he spoke at my college graduation, and then I really got an appreciation from him from there. I think so. I don't think Cornel West is presented that way. I don't think he's presented as dignity as part of his package, right? Yeah. Well, Muhammad Ali maybe, yeah, definitely not when he was younger, right? Sorry? Yeah, but do you see how hard it is to come up with anyone, right? And that's a statement about our culture. Yeah? Sorry? But name people.
But they're there. It's just that you don't hear about the popular culture because that's not what the media or this particular society well.
Sure, and this is sort of what I'm saying. That maybe in our town, you can probably name many people that interact with dignity, that conduct themselves with dignity. You might find people in the grocery store that conduct themselves with dignity. Okay? I'm saying on the national level, you find almost no one. And I think that speaks very much to the psychology of our culture. Sorry?
These things, like courtesy and all this, and art, usually I find the Iranians are very courteous towards each other.
Oh, yeah, Iranians have a lot of focus on adab, even in their style of language. Yeah.
Just
The guy who was nuclear negotiator.
Yeah.
He's on the news circuit and he's constantly attacking the red and the Yemen's all very calm and he handles very well, but he's not aloof. He's handling himself in a dignified manner.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about.
From the people we're interviewing.
This is what I'm talking about, right? That what's often promoted in our culture is a very different type of behavior, almost like an aggressive type of behavior is what's promoted at the national level. Yeah,
Part of the nature of this culture, right?
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So if you knew more about Japan, you'd probably list 20 figures on the national level.
Probably. Yeah. Sure. But I'm saying, as Muslims in this society, I think, as it is, we should have tremendous focus on adab. I'm saying on top of that, that will have residual benefits beyond the community. That, that if we have a reputation of dignified conduct, I think that's one of the best da'was you could possibly have in our society. Yeah.
I told my wife when I have the coffee, I went to this Catholic cafeteria, in Algonquin, and this girl, 26-year-old girl, came and said, and I asked her, she asked me, sir, what would you like, and all that, and I said coffee and all that. I was watching to see what is the effect of religion and this discipline on her.
Yeah.
And for the next hour, I was sitting there, and people are coming, wonderful families are coming. And I was talking to this, I was very impressed with her, the mannerism and everything. And I discuss this religion with this psychologist to help out. I was very happy. And I told him, Joe, I was very impressed with this statement. He says, they are taught 4 years what is humility. Another 4 years they are taught how to serve with joy. It takes 8 years to develop a person.
Wow. So,
I said, well, as Muslim, this thing is not passing the year, nobody's even mentioned. And so, his monastery, Brother Wayne, he's still, if you knew him. He was a university professor. I used to go to the common ground. And he was a very humble man. He carried himself really well. And anytime I asked him, Muhammad, you have a question. He would stop right up there, then and there. And he was just so humble and so approaching. And I asked him some questions. He says, honestly speaking, Muhammad, I cannot answer this question. So, but I mean, I even like that. That he says, honestly speaking, Muhammad.
yeah, sure.
One time I asked him, brother, you said you're a Catholic. And if in this room somebody pulled a gun on us, we'd be asking a policeman to save us from this bad guy. If God is good, why do I need Jesus to save me from a good God? I'm telling you that God is very bad. And this Jesus will save us from this bad guy. This is Muhammad, honestly speaking. I don't know. And I like the answer. And I asked somebody else, what would be the answer to this thing? He says, well, Jesus would save me from the sin. And I said, why can't God do it?
Sure, that would be the conversations between Muslims and Christians.
I was saying that he was sort of in the common ground,
Yeah.
kind of a role model for dignity.
What's his name?
Well, he died, Brother Wayne Teasdale.
No, actually, this name is familiar.
He was
Right. I think you told me about it. Okay.
I gave him a ride one time. He said, Mom, this was a great charity.
Good.
But it takes so. But at one point he was giving a lecture at Common Ground, and he says, I tell you, what was that guy from New York? He says, he'll be the next Jewish guy, he'll be the next president of this country.
Oh, really?
And he did not happen. What happened, he said, the guy was celibate, all his life he dedicated to learning and all, Buddhist debates and dialogues with Muslims and all that, and he was kind of at the forefront. But I mean, what I'm saying is, all these things must have helped him develop a person of his character. It's hard to control your anger and frustration, and you come to terms. I don't know.
Cool. Okay, 236. La junaha alaykum. Okay, so there's no liability, there's no wrong. You're not held to account on you if you divorce women when you have not yet touched them, nor fixed for them an amount. So give them, says, I could give them a gift. A rich man according to his means, and a poor according to his means, a benefit in recognized manner again. Bil ma'ruf. Okay, the recurring theme throughout all of this is related to your interaction with dignity. حقا على المحسنين. This is an obligation on those who are muhsin. So again, the surface issue, I don't mean surface in the sense of not shallow, but the prominent issue in the ayah here is not really to death, but now to divorce. And then here's some rules. Again, I'm not going to go through the details of the rules for our purposes. But the latter part, okay, a rich man according to his means, a poor according to his means, and you do this mata'a bil ma'ruf, and you do this bil ma'ruf. And what is ma'ruf? It's what is normal practice, what is dignified customary practice. Yes, sir?
So is that without the state? I mean, it's different from like the Shia.
No, it's not muta marriage. No. That's why I thought, okay, that's a strange thing not to translate. Let's see how our friend Bigdal translates this. Okay. So, it is no sin on you if you divorce women while they have not yet touched them, nor appointed unto them a portion, provide for them the rich according to his means, straight according to his means, a fair provision. This is bounden duty for those who do good. So, that's a completely different topic. Yeah.
When he asked them, the Shia, that thing that he brought up, I think this is Sunni propaganda.
Yeah, there are very, very specific rules and such. I mean, There are common stereotypes that Sunnis have of Shias. There's common stereotypes that Shias have of Sunnis, and sometimes all these stereotypes are funny, and sometimes they're just ridiculously offensive. But usually, the stereotypes are often not correct. Some cases, but I mean, again, I can't speak about what's going on overseas. But here, I think there are many other factors, because the stereotypes are at all ages. Okay, finishing this discussion on death, marriage, divorce. If you divorce them before you have touched them and you have appointed unto them a portion, then pay half of that which you have appointed. So what are we saying here? And the fiqhi point is that if you have agreed upon a meher, okay, you have not consummated the marriage, then at least you give half. Okay. Unless they agree to forego it, or he who agrees to forego it in whose hand is the marriage tie. To forego is nearer to piety. And forget not kindness amongst yourselves. Allah is seer of what you do. Okay. Putting all these together, what is the subtext in all of these? Okay. When we spoke about nursing, okay, we said the theme here was that you should treat people with the proper courtesy that they deserve. Okay. And then from there, repeated points about treating people according to what is customary in your culture. Okay. So one level is to treat people with courtesy. Another level is according to the best of your culture. Every culture has a concept of good conduct, concept of acceptable conduct, and bad conduct. So you should treat people according to the best conduct. This is ma'ruf. Repeat it again. Bil ma'ruf. Bil ma'ruf. And then this last ayah adds that this is an obligation for those who are muhsineen. If my goal is to be a muhsin, then I'm not looking at the minimum behavior. I'm looking at the best behavior. Okay. That's what I am aspiring to. And this last point is taking it now a step further. Okay. Which is essentially where to go. Okay. Okay. It's that nearer to taqwa is to disregard anything anybody owes you. That part of adab is what? I treat you according to status, your status, but I have no expectations of how you treat me. This is also humility. That in our culture, when we speak about humility, it means you're just modest, you don't talk about yourself. Humility, according to this definition, is you can be frank, but you don't expect people to treat you according to your level. Okay. So if you're a king, you don't expect to be treated like a king. You're fine being treated like a servant. If you're a servant, you don't expect to be treated like a servant. You're fine being treated like someone even lower. Right? That there's always status in society. Humility is to be happy with however people interact with you. But you still treat them like kings. Okay. So we're saying part of taqwa is to overlook what people owe you. Okay. So we go from courtesy to ma'ruf to being muhsin, and part of being muhsin, the people of taqwa, is you don't look at what you make sure you give people what you owe them, but you don't look at what people owe you. Okay. Which is an important lesson about character and interpersonal relationships. Okay. The next section we'll touch on next week. I mean, it's still, we're talking about divorce and such, but we're also going to be talking about salah with this interesting ayah to guard your middle prayers. That we'll talk about, inshallah, next week. Okay, any last questions or thoughts? Let's make dua. Once again, don't forget that the IQRA annual dinner is in 2 weeks. So we'll class next week, and then everyone's urged to go to the IQRA dinner. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Okay, may Allah Ta'ala reward you all. May Allah Ta'ala give you all a safe ride home and everything. And wa akhiru da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.